I'm looking for a new neon sign for the greenery wall outside of Lot. And I want like a cute Thanksgiving kind of one.
Thanksgiving one?
Yeah, like I mean,
a cornucopia?
No, like just one that says like grateful or thankful. And Amazon is not helping me out right now.
Well, just keep looking and follow your heart, and you'll. I don't know. Well, hey everybody, welcome to the Next Day podcast.
The next day on your discipleship journey.
I'm Chad.
I'm Christie.
And we are live out in the pumpkin patch.
Yeah, we have a big audience out here.
All right, let's hear it, audience. What do y'all think of the Next Day podcast?
They love it.
There's nobody out here because the patch isn't really technically open either. So that's why if it sounds a little different, you hear some cars going by. If you hear a weed eater off in the distance, we are out in the front of the church at our pumpkin patch. And, we had a really good weekend of sales.
It was.
We had, we had all sorts of pumpkins out here, but now there's not as many anymore. We have lots of little ones.
It got picked over at Piccadilly.
Yeah, exactly. Piccadilly was this last week. It was a lot of fun. And, yeah, we got to a lot of crafts. Did you buy anything?
I did. I bought a few birthday gifts for Emmy because her birthday's in November.
She was here with you, though, right?
Yes, I was discreetly buying things. I bought her a Snuggie that has like cats on it, like a cat pattern, and it was like on a mannequin display, and I was like, that has Emmy's name written all over it. And then she walked by it after I'd already bought it and was like, Mom, and I was like, oh yeah, that's cute, let's keep going. So I'm excited about that. And Jesse was so cute. He brought like a little Ziploc baggie full of like coins that he just like emptied out of his piggy bank, and he wanted to buy stuff for Emmy for her birthday, and I just thought that was the sweetest thing ever.
Wait, what month is her birthday?
November.
Yeah, she's the opposite of all of y'all.
Yeah.
Everyone else's is in February.
We're the second of the month, and she's the second of the last.
So she gets special attention then.
She does. She gets, but Jesse gets special attention for his birthday as much as we can because we're competing so much with like Valentine's Day.
Yeah. That
we were, we're always like, okay, we have to like do it really big for Jesse. It's Justin whose birthday gets completely buried because his is the same day as Jesse's.
Well, that's what you get.
I just moved him up. I moved Justin up in my mind to my birthday so that we share a birthday because we're only a week apart. So his and mine, we just celebrate him on the, around my birthday on the 7th.
Nice. Well, I just bought some I got pecan halves from our UWF group. And Sable loves some pecans. Oh, yeah. And we'll be snacking on that bag for a while. So.
And will it last that long?
Yeah, it's just a little bit. It's just a little handful here and there. And
that's very self-control.
I know, it is. And, of course, I ate some food here. So, yeah. So Piccadilly was good. And Trunk or Treat was also really good. I'm surprised my voice isn't gone from doing the emceeing and doing the cakewalk.
Yeah, you were the voice of Trunk or Treat the whole time.
It was a lot of fun. So because of those two events, that's why, we made a lot of good sales at our pumpkin patch and all that. So, but we wanted to go ahead and do this. We did this last year. It was a lot of fun and wanted to go ahead and record again. So again, if you hear some car noise or I think wind, I think these mics are going to pick up every bit of wind. So hopefully this won't turn you away from listening to this. As we are going to be talking about these sermons from this week, we're going to be, if you got to hear Christie in the Element, Carl. It was Mike Senior. Yes,
Laity,
and he has preached before. I should have arranged to see. I'm sure he's working right now. We need to arrange to talk with him at some point. But he's done some sermons out west before, so he did that one, and then Preston over at the traditional service. But let's get started with our icebreaker. So Christie, What is your favorite kind of pumpkin? No, I don't know how. I don't know how far we
I don't
can get
even
into
know.
The orange kind.
Actually, I like the Cinderella pumpkins, but
what, the white ones or those peach colored
the
ones?
cute colored ones, and they're like kind of squatty and.
Oh yeah, the squat. Not the octopus ones that Preston had in his video.
Yeah.
No, but and I can't remember if I asked this before or not, but. Thinking back, what has been your favorite costume to dress up as for Halloween?
You've asked this before.
Have I? Are we going to look back in the episode and be like, oh, yeah, we talked about it? But I always like asking students this because it's always interesting seeing what they come up with. But what has been your favorite? It could be when you were little and all that. I know mine's when I was little, if I think about one that really has special memories.
What is it?
So it was just a ninja. It was just, just a ninja. It was just, now, it was the most dangerous thing you could wear because it was all black. All black.
Oh, my gosh,
with
yeah.
a yellow belt and, like, a yellow headband kind of a thing. But it came with, like, a little samurai sword. I know, people are going to be like, hey, the ninjas aren't samurai, but, I was a kid. So it was a ninja with a sword, and I loved going out in that. And I loved just dressing up as it, even when it wasn't Halloween. I was just around the house. And I did all this, like, my junior year of high school, I think. So I would just... No. I was little. But I just remember how much fun I had in that one.
I think my favorite... my favorite, the one that always sticks out is I did a group costume in college with a bunch of friends, and we were the Scooby-Doo crew. And
oh gosh, you were Scooby.
I was Daphne.
Oh, okay.
And I used 3 cans of orange hairspray on my hair to get the orange color of Daphne's hair.
There's a big hole in the ozone, but at least you look like Daphne.
Yeah, it was. But it was so fun. We had such a good time. We were stopped on the street like constantly to have our picture taken with people. Mm-hmm. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah. Well, there's some. I saw Scooby-Doo. I saw some people dressed up as that in this one at Piccadilly. At Trunk or Treat.
The Price is Right people.
Yes, that was my favorite. There were people, Price is Right contestants.
Okay, in Trunk or Treat, though, the trunk that won Best Trunk was my favorite. It was Costco, and it was so cute. Like,
I love
what
the
a great
touches
idea
with the boxes on the back because
Yes.
when you walk around, like whether it's Sam's Club or Costco, it's like you just see these boxes that everything's stored up
you'd
in.
like come up and they had a table and they're like, hi, would you like a sample?
Yeah, and they had the aprons and it had everything. Like,
it was so good. I was like obsessed.
Yeah.
It was the best.
Which, hey, that's our sponsor for this. Costco. When you need to buy a lot of stuff, go to Costco. All right. Yeah, so that was really good. I really like that one, too. And then Preston's trunk confused me because it had a football field background, but they were doing soccer.
It was a soccer field.
But it was a football, like they had the lines of the football field. Yeah. Now, I get it. High school soccer plays on the football fields, blah, blah, blah. I get that. But it was kind of still confusing. So, anyways.
Well, it was great. It was great fun.
Yeah. Well, let's get on to our sermon as we're going to be talking about the spooky season. The opening's very kind of eerie.
I know. But it's like I said on Sunday, I'm like, every time that wolf howls, I know without looking up, I'm like, oh, it's go time.
Yeah. We are going to be doing, we're going over the spooky stories in the Bible. So far, we have talked about the Valley of Dry Bones found in Ezekiel. And then last week we talked about the ever popular story in the Bible, Saul and the Witch of Endor. I still have to say it like that. But the Witch of Endor, that was an interesting one. This one today, we're talking about, now we say it's covering the plagues. But
not.
Really, it's touching on the plagues, but it's also talking about the precursor to it's almost like the thing that kind of happened right before the plagues that a lot of people may remember, but you may also kind of overlook it because you go straight to the plagues of, the plagues in Egypt with Moses as God's people were enslaved, and then Moses and Aaron were tasked with "let my people go" kind of a thing.
Yes.
And so we might remember the rivers of blood. We might remember the darkness, and the one that sticks out to me is like the boils.
Oh yeah. Do
That
you just
one
like
always-
visualize the Prince of Egypt?
I think of Ten
you think
Commandments.
of Ten Commandments.
Ten Commandments.
I think of the Prince of Egypt. I just like see it all in my mind. It was very formative.
Yeah. But no, we're talking about, yes, the plagues. That's still a part of this spooky story because it was scary. And when I go talk about the Ten Commandments, I've shared before how I think I would get nightmares from that last plague because the way they on the Ten Commandments they had it was that fog. It was like a fog coming through, and that was like the angel of death killing the firstborn kind of thing. I guess that's what all that was. And I used to be scared of fog because I was like, oh no. But part of me was like, well, I'm not the firstborn. But then I'm a firstborn male, so does that matter? I don't know.
No, that's a lot of pressure.
But anyways, we talked about the story of Moses and Aaron coming to Pharaoh for the first time, and this is where everyone's scary animal, the snake, shows up.
You know, it is interesting that a snake is a representation of, of God and the power of God in this story. And I think that's like, it's very purposeful because, right, like when you think about a snake in the Bible, what's the first thing you think about?
You think of the snake that bit the heels and people, and no. You think of Adam and Eve.
Right.
And the snake
serpent
and the tree. Yeah.
in the Garden of Eden. You know, that's like kind of this like image for evil in Scripture. And so it's interesting that like Moses is, or Aaron's staff becomes a snake to, represent the holiness and like, power and might of God. But what's interesting though is that like Moses, we skipped over this in our passage, in the element at least. I think in traditional service they read it. I'm not sure about West if they read the first part of this, but in the first part of chapter 7, God says to Moses, I will make you, Moses, like a god to Pharaoh. And Aaron is like the prophet, right? It's just like how God has a prophet speak for him. But he's setting up Moses to be like a god to Pharaoh. And that's a really interesting way of saying, anything in Scripture, like comparing someone else to God. But what God is like doing here is he is like reversing the narrative and flipping the tables on Pharaoh. Because Pharaoh, and this is just goes for like all divine, all pharaohs of Egypt, they consider themselves, and Egypt considers the Pharaoh a divine presence, a divine being. So Pharaoh kind of thought of himself as God. And so Moses, God is saying like, I am going to put you in front of Pharaoh to represent me, right? Like you are going to be...
It's going to be your God versus this God.
Right.
Yeah.
So like he's elevating Moses to be able to like do these acts and wonders. Moses extends his hand out, to make the snake turn into a staff, or to put out your staff to split the waters in two, right, in the Red Sea. Like Moses is doing this, and through Moses God is working, but he's like having Moses do these acts. So anyway, what Moses actually becomes in this, with this whole snake situation, is a snake handler. Like he becomes a snake handler in this whole narrative. He becomes, the one who, like makes the snake come into being. He's the one who makes it, eat the other snakes and all of that, right? Like, so he's controlling the snake. And so in this way, it's kind of like God sending this message, across the whole narrative of Scripture that, by the power of God's Spirit, through Jesus, that we would see, far, far later on in the story, that Jesus is the ultimate snake handler, right? Like Jesus comes to, to put that, that snake where he belongs, right? And to cast out evil forever for those who believe. So cool kind of connection there to the New Testament, but it's very buried in all of that.
Yeah. And what's interesting, well, first off, I just get this weird image of a snake eating another snake because it's like
cannibalism.
Yeah, well, that, but also it's like, so the snake's only so long, and it's eating another snake, so it's like
it's nesting.
It's almost like the other snake that's being eaten is just putting on a jacket or something, right? It's just like, I'm going to put on another layer here.
I don't know.
But then Preston shared that, this term snake, it may be different than what we're used to because, back then they would have talked about serpents and like more sea serpent type of stuff, or maybe even, it could have even been like a big lizard, like a monitor or like a Komodo dragon. And how, really, like they could just say that's a snake really in terms of like what we read today. So it could have been something different where one was, but he did make a point of saying how the one that Moses and Aaron, their snake, was way bigger, and it was going to be more powerful than the other ones.
Well, and you kind of assume that because it consumes the other snakes, right? So you just kind of have that picture of like, well, this snake must be like bigger and better than the other snakes. But one thing that I think that, it likely was actually a snake, the understanding that we have of snake, because this is a good point. What you said about animals, and because when you think of Egypt, you do get animal images. Like I always think of cats, and those dog-like heads and things like that. But you brought up a good point. Yeah, all the gods, that Egypt had, they all had like visual idol representations as statues and pictures and all sorts of things throughout the city of Egypt. So I gave a few examples. I
like the frog.
The frog goddess.
The frog goddess, because it looked like so simple, just a frog head.
I think that's Heket, if I'm saying that right. But that's the frog goddess, and there, I can't remember what she symbolizes. I think it might be fertility. There's a lot of fertility gods and goddesses, but like the Nile River itself, like it represented multiple different gods.
It represented rivers and water.
It represented, for Egypt, it was a representation of like power. Yeah. And there was like a source of the Nile, so that was sort of like a source of the power, and that had a god. And then like the god of like the current, or the god of like just the water or whatever, or flooding, the flooding of the Nile or whatever. All of it was like connected to its own gods. Like Sobek was one of the gods represented in the Nile, and then there was like one that was like the head of a beetle, Khepri. And
in the picture you showed of that, it wasn't just the head of a beetle. His head was a beetle.
Yeah.
Like, and we're not talking about Ringo,
right,
and all that, but he was like really like the head. So the head had legs, and
and then there's like one was like head of a bull. Like it's like there's just a bunch of them, and like Sobek is like the head of a crocodile, which I think that's funny, like the Nile crocodile.
Yeah.
God or whatever. So it was just, it's kind of it's they're represented by a bunch of different animals. So remember, Pharaoh is considered a divine being, presence, and so Pharaoh wears this headdress, even though he's
like
human.
A koala.
No, of a cobra.
Oh, a cobra, that's it.
A koala.
I think it would have been better if they threw their staff down and a koala showed up, and it would have been interesting for them to know what a koala was.
Yeah.
In that part of the world.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, that would be like a koala must be an alien if they knew what that was. But no, so cobra, you wear a headdress of a cobra. And so like you look at that cobra and you see the staffs becoming snakes, right? Like Moses throwing his staff down and it being a snake. It's like this image of like, okay, it's war now against, it's the, you're pretending to be this divine being. You have this like cobra headdress or whatever, And then there's this like, it's not magic, right? It's the power of God. But it looks like magic. It's what like the dark arts. It's what the magicians can do. But, Aaron throws down the staff and it becomes a snake in front of this, Pharaoh who views himself as a god with wearing a snake head, Like, I think that there's this really cool connection there. And then, like, the other magicians do the same thing. And I think this kind of, I didn't really touch on this a lot in the sermon, but, like, even this image of, like, the multiple snakes sort of represent the multiple gods, right? And, like, the way that, the in their culture where they worship all of these different gods. They're polytheists, right? They worship all of these different gods and think that like, oh, we have so many gods, we have so many things like to protect us, and in the end, like, God's showing like all of the gods, like it doesn't matter how many you have, they had thousands.
Yeah, and that's where you really, it's great thinking of like the different plagues were in kind of response to their gods, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting to think of like, those gods could not protect them. So like the Nile turned into blood. I'm sure there was a sun god or something, so then there was darkness. Now, but I am confused though. Like, what is the frog god? And then there's just frogs everywhere.
Well, because like,
it's like, obviously that frog god's winning, right? Like, there's lots of frogs everywhere. I got Christie all choked up.
I know. Yeah, you really did. I joked that it was ironic that we were talking about the plagues this week in the sermon because I came down with the plague.
Everyone thought you had the black plague, by the way.
Yeah.
Everyone was concerned.
Yeah, I do have the black plague. I'm getting over it.
No, Christie almost didn't preach because she got sick. And she got bit by another kitten. And so she had to go and get it.
No, but, okay, also sidebar, guys. So we have a new worship leader in the Element. His name is Blake. I'm very excited. I was introducing him this Sunday. But guess what Blake and I have in common?
Y'all both got bitten by kittens and had to get rabies shot.
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
He did? By
a
kitten?
A couple weeks ago. It was a cat.
Possum?
It was a cat.
Oh, it was a cat.
But he got bit by a cat, and then he was like, I had to go get a rabies vaccine. And I was like, oh my gosh, same.
That was their bonding moment.
It's great. So, we're very protected against
wild animals. What if he heard that story in advance and he just wanted the job? So
Maybe.
He just said, oh, yeah, me too.
Me too.
I got a rabies shot too, yeah.
Yeah, I love it. That was real good attention to detail.
You're part of the rabies club. That's good. But that was interesting to think about, because when you hear these different plagues, they are kind of random to us. You think about gnats, and that's annoying. Okay, frogs. I think some people are like, well, what's so wrong with that? And it does tie into stuff.
Oh, ugh.
I mean, a lot of it does tie into like their, just how they did life back then and all that. And each one of these things disrupted a lot. But that is interesting to think about. Like, their gods could not protect them because here's the God.
Right.
Here's Yahweh. Here's our God, like, showing, no, I got this. Like,
Oh, yeah. God is, like,
God
through all
is
of this.
in control.
Oh, I thought you were going to go, God is an awesome
God.
But he,
our God is stronger. Our God is
musical interlude. God's like tearing down all of these idols, like just showing power over all of these idols. It's like, you think that you have control over like what the frogs, what creation does, and not that like the frog goddess is like only over the frogs, just represented by a frog, but
that's a riveting argument.
But just like showing this power over this by kind of what's the word I'm looking for? Just using the frogs as an example, because they would associate this with like their frog goddess, right?
Yeah.
And just being like, I'm gonna swarm you. It's like almost like, okay, you want to believe in your God, call upon your God to to see if they can do this. Like, can they overpower me? No, the answer is no. And time and time again, it's like this is shown throughout all of the plagues. So it's a really difficult story, and it's really interesting as you read through it. Looking at the idols, right, and the way that Pharaoh just continued to harden his heart over and over and over again, and just have this sense of pride. And there were moments where he began to crack a little bit. Like he would ask Moses to pray for him to his God, pray for me, please, like, ask your God to relent, so like over and over you think like, okay, maybe we're making some headway, but then God would, relent from, the whatever plague is coming upon Egypt. And then Pharaoh's like, no, I'm not going to do it.
No, I'm good.
So that was just, you see this story go on and on. What I think is like really captivating about this story though, in the biblical narrative is that like after all of it and Egypt, is not able to hold on to Israelites, God rescues them out of Egypt, goes, into the wilderness, is at Mount Sinai, and, is about to present the, like, 10 Commandments. Mm-hmm. And Moses is called up to the mountain.
And all the people are very thankful, and they love God.
At first. They're all just, like, kind of like, what are we doing here? Even though they've seen all of these signs and wonders, like, literally everything that God...
the Red Sea.
Yes. Like literally everything that God said was going to happen. And like God gave forewarning for everything. He's like, if you don't do this, I'm going to do this. Like that was what was said to Pharaoh every time. Like there was a warning. Like Pharaoh had a chance to say like, well, I don't want that to happen, or like, all right, you know what, God, your God has shown how powerful your God is. So like, I'm going to, you guys, yes, worship your God. And that was part of the issue here is that like they were unable to worship God. Mm-hmm. Like Egypt was like, oh, you can worship our thousands of gods, but you cannot worship your God. So it's like there were just no ability for them to have the freedom to worship the way that they, were called to worship. So you're right. God rescues them out of this. Everything that God has said was going to happen has happened as it was said. They are, out of enslavement. And Moses goes up Mount Sinai to receive the 10 Commandments. And he is up there for many days. He's up there for a while.
He's taking his time.
I mean, yeah, God is, this is like this incredible story.
I think there's been lots of arguments over what these 10 were going to be. It was like, well, I think that no.
But it's like Moses comes back down with the first pass of the 10 Commandments, and they have set up a golden calf. And I just find that to be so fascinating that, after all that they've been through and the way that God has torn down every single one of these idols, over and over again, that here we are with Israel setting up an idol, like just like Egypt.
It's like, God dang it, people! What?
And it's like, and it's they're modeling their oppressors. Yeah. They're modeling like the place that they had been enslaved for hundreds of years. It's
like they're trying to go back to a place of comfort of some sort, even though it wasn't a place of comfort.
Right.
But like, and then you really drove this home with like, we do this today. Like we do this to where we know certain things are not the best for us, and yet we will always turn back to those vices. We'll turn back to those habits and turn back to those things. And you brought up like, what are our idols today? Which I don't think we're making golden calves.
We're not, right?
But, but gold, wealth.
Right, wealth. We absolutely value all of, so many things over and above, our relationship with God.
Yeah. And so
I'm being interrupted in the patch for just a moment, but I need to go say hello to somebody. Okay, I'm going to introduce you to, this is my friend Richard Ader, and he's known me since how old?
A little bitty baby, when she was a little Zelmer.
Oh,
that's right. Are you dropping off name tags?
Yes, name tags. Yeah, so we do at Ark Enterprises name tags for all churches, special price because we all love Jesus.
Nice.
I love it. Well, good to see you, Richard.
Hey, Mom, Daddy, hey.
All right.
Nice meeting you. I'm going to say, when we do these podcasts out in the wild, you never know
who
you're going to meet or come across.
Yeah, no, I've known Richard for many years. I used to go to church. We used to go to the same church back in when I was growing up in Cyprus.
All right.
So
All right.
yeah.
All right. Well, but yeah, talking about idol.
Yes, sorry, idols.
We're talking about not getting distracted from.
Right, from God. Right, so.
But no, but yeah, and whenever you talked about that, I mean, I wrote down, like, I always like to draw stuff. And so I drew down, like, a dollar sign because I think that can obviously be an
Yes.
idol, that we're always aspiring for more wealth. And then, like, I also put down a cell phone, a heart for, like, likes on social media and
Yeah.
stuff. People are always looking for more popularity
Yeah.
and more things like that. And also put a flag for, I don't know, maybe it's our nationality and all that.
Yeah.
Like, do we put... What else do we put our identities in?
Right.
Kind of like going back to when we talk about Saul, but what else are we putting our identities in? What else are we putting before God?
Mm-hmm.
And it's not helpful to us. It's
Well, and
just distracting us, and it's not helping us fulfill what God really wants us to
I
do.
even talked about like my health, because this was sort of how I was tying in like being sick this week. But like, I think I was thinking about this, that like how much we sacrifice, because the thing with idols, and this goes back to the Egyptian culture, or, many, ancient Near East cultures, the idols that they set, they had to make sacrifices to those idols, and the idols would like want more and more from them.
Yeah.
It was like would ask for more and more sacrifice, but then like they would be given less and less until there really is an enslavement. Like you are enslaved to this idol because you've sacrificed so much for it. And I know that these are words that we use for the Christian culture too. So I'll get to that in just a second. Sacrificing ourselves, right, to God. But so I was thinking about like health, for example, like how much we sacrifice for our health. And I'm not saying that like, we absolutely, your body's a temple, like treat it as such. And people can skew that in all sorts of different ways. But like, we know that it's good to exercise. It's good to eat healthy, and all of those sorts of things. So, but, when you are like, okay, I'm hitting the like, I take my vitamins, my supplements every day, and I'm hitting the gym and I'm doing all the things. And then you get sick. It's like all that you've sacrificed, to keep your body healthy it's just like goes away in that moment. Right. And you're like, well, what was it all for?
So y'all heard it here. Don't work out.
No, but but when you make it like an idol, like if I do these things, then I will be fine. Mm-hmm. But the truth is that like, God is the giver of life. God is the one who keeps the breath filling our lungs and provides all of the goodness for us. And we do make choices. Like you can make healthy choices, so it's like making choices to eat the right things and, exercise and all of that stuff. But like our health, is not just like, there are things that happen that we're like, oh, that was like completely out of our control and out of our hands. And so we, making that an idol in our lives, like it's easy to do that. So it's like, it's things that sometimes we don't think about, rather than turning it over to God, relinquishing that kind of control. It goes back again, right, to Saul, like we talked about last week, is relinquishing that control, because a lot of these idols, are an idol of control in our lives. But,
Let's say you saying all that reminds me of on Parks and Rec, Chris Traeger. He's like the city manager who he's always perfect health, eating supplements, always working out, because he wants to be the first human to live to a certain age, and so he is, but yeah, just like you said, everything you just said there was exactly him, because whenever he would get sick, he would just collapse. Whenever something doesn't go right for him, he doesn't know how to respond to it.
Right.
And it's just, he puts so much into that.
Yeah.
And then he had to really overcome a lot with like dealing with failure and being unhealthy at times and things like that.
Well, there's a lot to it, but I will say, so like, and I said I was going to come back to this. So we talk about sacrifice a lot in our Christian life, in our life of faith, that like it does have to do with a lot of self-sacrifice. Mm-hmm. And that is true. It's just the difference is that, when we sacrifice to these idols, it's like this temporary fix every single time, or just, and maybe not even, we're just enslaved to it, but we are freed when we sacrifice our lives for God, when we give our lives over to God, we're freed from all of that enslavement to all of these other things, and we are fulfilled, right? Like we don't need for anything. We don't want for anything, right?
Yeah.
Because God is the source and provider of all of our needs, and so it's similar language, and that's what makes, that's where this makes sense. It ties to these cultures around the, ancient Hebrew people all sacrificed to gods, right? So there's a similar language that we see throughout the Old Testament and the New Testament.
No, and that reminded me, I just had to do a reading for like a class I'm taking, but like reading over the early church and how Paul, like some of the things they did when they were, like some of the differences. So a lot of these places that the early church was popping up in places, like philosophy was the big deal, right? And a lot of these philosophers, like Stoics philosophers and all these other ones, their big thing was like, hey, if you want to achieve anything in life, you got to become like a philosopher. You got to think like a philosopher. You got to do this. This is what you're aiming for. But what these early disciples did in the early churches, they went to people and where they worked, and they were like, no, keep working. Keep working. God loves you. Hey, come join us. Like, because Paul himself had a trade, and then everyone else had their own trades and all that. And it was just like, no. Keep doing what you're doing. You're enough. Like, and I think that message alone. So when they had church in like marketplaces, and they had in all these other places where everyone was, it showed people that you didn't have to somehow leave and earn a certain achievement and a status or anything like that. Like, you were just there. You're already enough. And whenever you were talking about that yesterday in your sermon, it reminded me of that, of just like, hey, you're enough. Like, where you are, you're enough. Now, that doesn't mean you can't, there's nothing wrong for going for a promotion. There's nothing wrong for, because you understand, like, you do need to earn some more money sometimes and things like, there's nothing wrong with that. But don't let that be your identity. Know that God already loves you, and you're not trying to achieve something to earn that. Right.
There's you don't have to set up all of these idols in your life, because it's like having God, we are enough, right? Yeah. Like and that's the thing too with like, with Christian culture. I love to relate this to gold, like the refining of gold. And I think I've talked about this before, but, because we need Jesus. We recognize that, like, we need Jesus in our lives. Like, we on our own are not enough, right? We can't do anything to earn. There's nothing we can do to earn anything, right? So it's like, we're not necessarily like enough to save ourselves, but Jesus is enough for us, right? So that, like, we are made one with Jesus, so that we are, in the eyes of God, we're enough just as we are. So it's like, I take this as refining of gold as an analogy for this, because it's like, gold has to be like heated up and melted down and like the super, super high temperature. And in order for it to like reach its melting point. And then once it's been at that melting point and, heated up for a while, all of the impurities will rise to the top, and then they're scooped away, and the gold is then pure. And that is a good representation of what our walk with Christ does for us. Is it's sanctifying, right? It's refining, but all the while we are gold. Like, God doesn't look at us with all the impurities and say like, this isn't worth anything. God sees it and says like, this is gold. You are gold. You are just being refined, right? And in that refining process, that's our relationship with Christ, being enough for us to be refined.
Nice, yeah. I remember you sharing that analogy before, and it is a really good one. Yeah. Well, there's the story of the serpents, or the snakes, and the plagues, and all that.
There it all is.
Well, our God is greater. Our God is greater. Am I messing that up?
Man,
our God is stronger.
Blake, move over. We've got a worship leader right here.
I know. Why didn't you call on me? Come on. Everyone could use a worship leader who plays harmonica.
That's right. Leading from the harmonica.
I just can't sing and play at the same time.
Hey, you guys. All right, let's sing this.
Yeah. That sounds nothing like a harmonica. So. Let's get to our ministry shout out. Speaking of Blake and the Element, we just want to give a shout out to the Element worship service. This has been, it is a place for so many people come there for worship, and it is a contemporary worship setting. What else can you tell us about the Element?
It's a really beautiful service. If I, could brag on it. I think it's just an environment that is very relaxed, very family friendly. You've really good music and a great environment to just meet God wherever you are, but to also be in community with your neighbors and people that maybe you don't know and would maybe never have crossed paths with if not for coming into this worship service. And it's we have communion every week in the Element, so that is something that I really, really value that we do each week, and every time that we gather, we get to share and table together.
And you say relax, but really there's plenty of traditional elements within the Element, right? Like we do sing the doxology, and there's some. So if you are used to a traditional service, we encourage you to come and try the Element, because you will see some things that we do this in traditional, but there are some things like, but we don't sing these songs and we don't really have these instruments. But you know what? It's still worship.
Yeah, and we do sing hymns, periodically. I like to sing them more frequently than not.
Yeah.
But you'll hear some songs that you might hear on Christian radio, or other contemporary worship songs, and with a little more. All of it has a little bit of a modern spin. So even the table, the communion table, is a little bit of adapted liturgy. Just bringing it to the modern day a little bit, but still celebrating these ancient rituals that we have in the church, and traditional. Things that you might find in the traditional service, in sort of a new and fresh kind of way. So it is more of a modern service, but it's great. So if you've never been to the Element before, I hope you come in and join. And I think that's the beauty of St. Peter's, is that we have so many options to come and worship.
Not every church. Some churches you go to only have a contemporary service. Some churches you go to only have a traditional, or they'll say they're doing like a blended type of thing.
Yeah.
But here, I mean, you have options, and we have we have members of the church who go to both.
Yeah.
Like they really will. They'll alternate. Yeah, they'll go to West Campus.
Yeah.
They'll go. I mean, West Campus is mainly contemporary also.
Yes.
And so, but they'll go to all of them, and you know what? I love that. Don't turn your nose up at one style of worship and than others. I grew up with both, and I have an appreciation for both. I don't ever see one as lesser than the other, and it's so great.
No, I grew up. Richard Ader, who we had on the podcast. He was at my home church growing up, and we had it started with a traditional service only, and then it was in the 90s, so the church pioneered the first contemporary service, and my parents...
That's where you would hear, "Our God is an awesome
My parents
God."
were really invested in pioneering this contemporary worship service. I'm not totally... I've never asked them about, what was it that they... if they just liked it more than the traditional. I'm not really sure, but... So I actually grew up, I when I was younger, went to a traditional service, but once we started the contemporary service at my church, my parents were really involved, and so that's where I grew up. So to me, when I think back on church, and some of the most formative things in church, it was the contemporary service.
Mm-hmm.
So,
anyway. All right, well, there's the Element, and of course plenty of other shout outs to just all, the pumpkin patch. We're out here right now. Funny that we haven't really talked the most about it, but we are out here. You got to hear lawnmowers and weed eaters and cars driving by. But we'll give a big shout out to our pumpkin patch, which again helps out with our community assistance fund, helping people in our community, all the proceeds and all that.
It's really, like we said, it's really picked over. So if you haven't gotten your pumpkin, you better hurry up.
There's still plenty out here, but come on out. Still photo opportunities and lots of other fun stuff like that. And Trunk or Treat for Kingsland, but Trunk or Treat for West is coming up this Sunday. So
that's right.
Lots of fun stuff happening. So But we hope you can all join us next week on the Next Day podcast as we continue talking about spooky stories, as we talk about Legion. He lived among the tombs. I have a funny story about this one, so believe it or not.
Oh,
be looking
I can't
forward
wait
to that
hear
one.
it.
All right, well, we'll see you all next week on the Next Day podcast.
See you next time.